The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Forest Parks and Recreation live webinar on the forest economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Michael Snyder, Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation, coming to you from my makeshift home office. Admittedly, it seems strange to be, for all intents and purposes, sitting in a room talking to myself, but I'm trusting that there's 40 or so of you out there tuned in from across Vermont and various places on our forest economy supply and value chains. We also have with us several folks from the Forestry Division, Director Fitzko, Paul Frederick, Keith Thompson, and Nate McKean, along with our fearless deputy, Sam Lincoln. We are here to initially present some information that we've been compiling and want to share a bundle of updates related to a market assessment in the forest economy that we've been doing with your help, with some updates on how we're approaching administration of the current use program in light of the pandemic, and some plans for state lands timber sales as well. So bundling a bunch of different information all together and wanting to get that out to you all, this seemed like a good format to do so, but most importantly, it allows us to present some information and then hear from you folks with questions and answers on those topics, and questions, comments, suggestions on all topics related. So we're eager to get to that. We have about an hour to do so. And I didn't want to take a whole lot of time here by way of intro, but I am proud of the work that our folks have been doing, essentially characterized as this. We're adjusting to this circumstance just like everyone else, working from home, forestry staff, all staff in the department for several weeks now, work from home circumstance, settling into that, figuring out how to do it during the stay home order. And with the phased approach to reopening the economy, including some aspects of our work, we're getting back to it slightly. But we've been focused on both, as I say, kind of the logistics of adjusting to a new approach, kind of an internal approach, but also very keen on paying attention to what's going on out there in your worlds, as we try to play a role in understanding, listening, hearing challenges, needs, also compiling information, resources, and trying to make that available to folks to be as helpful as we can. We're pleased that early on, many aspects of the forest economy were deemed essential. Forestry, logging, those who work in support of the production of certain forest products. I think that that was important and made us proud to know that we are essential and could help show the world that what we do matters, even in a pandemic. But the overall and overwhelming impacts have brought our economy into a tough place, and that's and the forest economy is not immune. And now, with additional challenges, say the explosion at the plant in Jay, Maine, we see implications recurring, and pretty concerned about all this. So that's why we're trying to gather and take stock, share information, recognizing that everybody wants to get back to work, but it's not over yet. We're still in an emergency declaration, and on behalf of Governor Scott, I know I can thank you all for the work you've done to try to make this work. But I know he'd also ask us to ask you to help us demonstrate best practices and stick with this to save lives and help us with the immediate response. And then really what we're thinking about is more medium term and longer term relating to a recovery to this pandemic situation. So that's why we're here. I hope that gives some context. And there's an awful lot to cover. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Danny Fitzko, Director of Forests, to give some logistics and kind of explain how this will run today through our presenters and the question and answers. So thanks. Looking forward to being part of this and hearing from you. Over to you, Danny. I hope that was a copy.
Yes, Mike, I'm here. Can you?
Yep, sounds good.
Good. Danielle Fitzko, as Mike mentioned, Director of Forest. Other duties as assigned, I'm going to be behind the scenes today, running a lot of the technology. As Mike mentioned, our goal is to make it as engaging as possible, recognizing that we're all sort of remotely and could be a little bit more, it's a little bit more challenging to answer your questions. We have 3 presenters today, and at the end of each of their sessions, we'd like to offer the opportunity to answer some focused questions And then at the end, we have a lot more time, 15 minutes, we can go to more of a dialogue. There are two ways you can ask questions. On your control panel next to your name under attendees, you can click the button that says raise your hand. If you raise your hand, I will try and get to you, and then I can unmute your mic and you can ask a question. The other opportunity is also on your control panel, there's an icon that says questions, and you can type a question into that question box, and we can answer those questions by typing them in or responding verbally when we get to that part of the section. So there's two opportunities. I will do my best to manage questions. There may be some questions that we don't get to that we can certainly respond to afterwards, and we'll do our best to get back to all of our questions. I also wanted to call attention to, also on your control bar, is a tab that says handouts. We have 4 handouts on there. One of them includes the agenda and then some supporting materials for our webinar today. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to our first presenter, is Paul Frederick, and he is our Marketing and Wood Energy Program Manager.
Thanks, Danny. You hear me?
Yes, Paul, we can hear you.
Okay, let me well, good morning, folks. I'm going to do a lightning round version of the market update this morning. You know, cognizant of the fact that we don't have very much time, but if folks have more questions, want more details, the market assessment is, as Danny said, one of the handouts that's available today, as well as being posted on our website. So we've gotten a number of questions about forest products markets over the last couple of weeks. So Sam and I got together and made some phone calls to mills and purchasers around the region during the first couple of weeks in April, and did an informal survey to try to get a handle on market conditions and to see what folks were expecting might happen with those markets over the next couple of weeks and months. We talked to folks in the major market sectors, from sawmills to maple, and the responses we got pretty much fall into the 3 broad categories of the good, the bad, and the ugly. On the hardwood, in the hardwood sawmill industry, the most positive news we got was probably related to export markets. And in this case, I'm talking about lumber export markets. Several people reported that before the start of the traditional Chinese New Year celebrations and the COVID shutdowns in China, export markets had shown some signs of improving. Buyers are hopeful now that that the export markets will continue to improve, particularly since the trade agreements are now beginning to take effect, and inventories are starting to clear in China now that their industries have reopened. On the other hand, a lot of secondary manufacturers are still closed in the Northeast and Quebec, and lumber demand is down, which is causing mills to have to hold more lumber inventory than usual at a time when they're trying to saw through their whitewoods before we have warm weather set in, which I'm told is going to happen sometime, believe it or not. Lack of demand seems especially problematic for grades of lumber traditionally used by the flooring mills in Quebec. And on the sideline, that lack of a flooring market is also likely to reduce the demand for 1 and 0 clear face pallet logs, since those low-grade logs are also typically processed by some of those same Canadian flooring mills. On the softwood side, mills that have retail markets have seen pretty good demand. Mostly homeowners doing small projects around the house. It was noted by a couple people that anything that seems to be related to gardening, like raised garden beds, seems to be particularly popular this year, and folks are buying lumber to build those little projects. On the other hand, high production softwood dimension mills that rely on new construction and remodeling have seen a much reduced demand. Housing starts dropped over 20% in March, and April isn't expected to look much better. As a result of that reduction in lumber demand on the construction end, mills across North America have been reducing their production and dropping their log prices. Most of our local pine mills have pretty good inventories of logs, and they're working through winter cut wood before weather gets warm again as well. They noted that direct to contractor sales were down, but the mills that are supplying the big box stores do seem to have good demand. Again, that's probably a result of the homeowner market and folks doing those little projects around home. Pulp and paper has been the most volatile lately, and we've seen some huge changes in the last 2 weeks. And like Mike noted, with respect to the Pixel plant. Paper demand had been shifting away from office and printing paper to tissue and packaging grades anyways, as a result of the stay-at-home orders. And we've heard already that at least one mill in the region is shifting their production to a grade of paper that requires more softwood and less hardwood fiber, which will tend to reduce their need for hardwood pulpwood. But the real game changer, really, as Mike noted, has been the digester explosion at the Pixel mill, which is formerly the Verso mill in Jay, Maine. Jay'd been buying large volumes of softwood mill residues and pulpwood, but the pulping operations at the mill are now on hold indefinitely. Apparently, they're receiving some market pulp from other Pixel facilities. They're headquartered in Pennsylvania and have mills there and in Wisconsin. And they're purchasing the rest of the pulp they need to run their paper machines from other mills in the region. Changes are already impacting concentration yards in the Northeast Kingdom. We heard from one yard last week an announcement that they were closing permanently as a result of the loss of markets. On the wood energy side, biomass electric plants are reporting that prospects for whole tree chip demand are currently good. They're planning to build inventory in the Vermont plants. That being said, natural gas, which tends to set the electric prices in the Northeast, is currently very cheap and available and driving power prices down. And that's making biomass a more expensive alternative for generating power on the grid. Firewood producers we surveyed reported that demand seems to be generally pretty good, but it varies somewhat with the end-use market. Homeowners that are stuck at home with a stay-home order have been burning more wood as a result of the cold spring weather, but the commercial markets that some folks sell into, restaurants and the like, are generally closed and obviously not buying any wood. Some of the processors reported they were seeing some good advanced sales from homeowners who were ordering early as a result of their perception that there could be short supplies next winter. That's the homeowner's perception. While others mentioned concerns about customers' ability to pay with so many people out of work, and that oil prices could affect sales going forward. Fuel oil right now is as cheap as I've seen it in years. Seems maple producers are having a very good production year. Some were still boiling as late as a week ago and still making good or acceptable quality syrup. Here again, the demand varies with the markets. Restaurants and food service demand is obviously off, but there's been a high demand from retail outlets. And one sugar maker that I talked to said that to him it seemed more like folks that are staying home with their kids as a result of schools being closed are cooking breakfast for their families and are using a fair amount of syrup. On the downside, as a result of the fact that the Canadians really set the world market price for syrup, and the fact that there's the dollar in Canada is weak compared to the US dollar, it's very likely that bulk prices will be held down as a result. So to kind of wrap up, my crystal ball is still a little fuzzy, and I think a lot of people are in the same boat. Moving forward, there's still a lot we don't know. While everybody would really like to know what markets are going to look like in the next 3 to 6 months, folks I talked to weren't willing to make many predictions. There was some guarded optimism, but as a result of the fact that businesses are still just starting to come online, it's going to be a little while before we can predict what the future is going to look like. I think at this point, Sam and I are planning to update the market assessment in a few weeks, make some more calls and see what we can find out. Hopefully as markets come back online, the situation will improve somewhat. So that's what I've got this morning. If anyone wants more information on what you heard, you can download the full market assessment from our website, or you can click on the market assessment on the handout tab here in the webinar. And with that, Danny, I guess I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Paul. We have a couple minutes. If anybody has a specific question for Paul, if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute your mic and you can ask the question. Fred, I'm going to unmute your mic, and you can ask your question. Fred?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a question, sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, the system works, we know. Anybody else have a question? Just raise your hand. Okay, and Paul will be with us throughout the webinar, so we'll have an opportunity to catch up with him again at the end. I'm going to make Keith Thompson the next presenter. He is our private lands program manager. Keith, we need to just unmute your mic.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. When I was looking at the registration list, it looked like a lot of consulting foresters were attending. And so for some of you who read my email from last Friday, some of this is going to cover the same material, but might provide an opportunity for a little bit more clarity or some questions. So as of last Monday, FPR forestry staff have increased but still limited ability to return to the field, particularly for private lands foresters who have frequent and short duration visits with landowners, foresters, things like that. We're still not meeting with partners or landowners, just because we're really taking the responsibility to protect our staff and the public seriously. If a field visit is critical to advance a harvest or implementation of management, please do let us know, and we'll consider what the options are for that. Recognizing that Paul's crystal ball is pretty fuzzy, and many of our crystal balls are fuzzy. A lot of things are up in the air, but when they become clear, we may see opportunities that we didn't see previously, and we're going to want to take advantage of those and help landowners take advantage of those through plan amendments or making sure that the management plan that we created can be acted on. Recognizing that the county foresters and in the private lands program, we've prioritized plan and amendment review, and we've set a goal that amendments that both meet the standards and are submitted in a certain way can probably be reviewed in 3 business days. But recognizing that we are all at our homes, we're not receiving hard copy mail unless we go to the office. There are a few conditions that we want to make sure that folks, if they want a quick plan review, they submit the amendments in a certain way. We've outlined that in the email. It's here. It's also in the handouts for the webinar. I also want to reemphasize that we changed the standards for signatures about a month ago now, allowing for electronic signatures. It is important that we receive the signatures at the time of submission for quick review and approval. And that policy is available on the website and also linked in the handout. Finally, just want to stress that the same standards that we've used in the past still apply, and folks have been doing a great job of meeting those, and so thank you for that. As far as communicating stuff with the county foresters, historically we've been kind of a hard copy program. People have been mailing stuff. Right now, email works best. We're really shifting to electronic management of files, and we'll be best able to be responsive if you're sending emails. If you're sending documents, please send them in PDF. That probably works best. Certified mail can be tricky. If there's something that doesn't work well with the email, please call ahead, and we'll make arrangements to help meet whatever the needs are. Recognizing that timely review of plans, amendments, and other documents is really important, and recognizing that when foresters bring their professional care and accountability to plan development, it builds trust and speeds plan review. The rules requiring licensing were passed 2.5 years ago, and as we come into this new update cycle, we're aligning the forester licensing policy or forester licensing rules with the UVA policy, basically requiring that that documents filed for UVA meet the forester licensing requirements. Most folks are doing this already. We appreciate that. There are a few folks who don't have a stamp or aren't familiar with the rules. If you've got questions, let me know. As soon as I sent out the email on Friday, Kathleen Warner let me know that VWA is able to provide stamps free of charge for their members, and for other foresters who are not members of VWA, they can still provide them at a good price. So feel free to get in touch with me if you've got questions or need help with that. We're going to be working on getting out the 2021 plan update letters. We've adapted this letter this year, and there's a sample of this letter linked in the handout. We've adapted the letter to make sure that landowners know that foresters are open for business, that they're taking appropriate safety precautions as required, and to also indicate that if they're going to struggle to get their plan update together by the April 1st, 2021 deadline, that they should contact their county forester. Certainly, if there are challenges resulting from COVID-19 that are preventing development of the plan, we should discuss that and consider what the options are. I also mentioned recognizing that a lot of folks are struggling to get hard copies of forms and files in and get signatures. The functionality to file forest management activity reports is available on eQuse right now. Consulting foresters can prepare them. We're doing a soft launch. We want to prepare some instructional materials for folks to use this, but several consultants have already prepared and submitted these without much challenge. Some of the benefits: there's no postage. A lot of the information is pre-populated related to the landowners and addresses and things like that. And I think of particular value for consultants is that the records of the filing remain available and the date of the filing are available, so you can be certain and you can communicate that with folks more easily than a hard copy that goes out in the mail, and if there hasn't been documentation of that. That covers what I've got. I went fast, want to make sure that there is time for questions if folks have it. A lot of these shifts were in response to suggestions by foresters and work with Private Lands Advisory Committee, and hope that we get more input that can help shape our response. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Does anybody have a specific question for Keith at this point? If you do, you can raise your hand, or don't forget, you can also ask a question in the question bar. Okay, not seeing any come up, I'm going to now pass it over to Nate McKean. Nate McKean is our operations manager and also overseeing our state lands program.
Great, thank you, Danny. Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to give you a quick update on state lands, particularly the upcoming sales that we hope to be showing this summer and fall. We have 16 sales that we're working toward getting out. And I'm going to just quickly give you some details about this spreadsheet that's up on this PDF that's up on the screen. Most importantly, this is available as one of the handouts in this webinar, and also available on our website at the state lands page. The 16 sales are well distributed around the state. They're a mix of treatments ranging from thinnings to patches to groups, and the products range from high quality to average quality saw timber to low grade pulp and chips. The sales are broken out by our 5 districts around the state. Those are in Springfield, Rutland, Essex, Berry, and St. Jay. And each of the districts is led by a stewardship forester, and the contact information for each one of those districts is at the bottom part of this PDF. You can see the names and the contact information there. And over to the right is a direct link to our website where this information is stored. So if you want to be added to the bid list or have questions about particular sales, then you should contact one of these 5 folks. And like I said, this PDF has some important details about each sale we hope to get out, but not all the details. So feel free to give those folks a call. Also, we're instituting some changes to our bid process in response to COVID-19 and the governor's executive order and stay home, stay safe guidance. As you all know, following the public health guidelines allows us to keep working, while also protecting your health and the health of our employees. These guidelines will be sent along with the bid documents and also updated on our website at the state lands page. But to give you a real quick summary, pre-registration will be required for all showings. And if you're interested, you can contact the forester in charge directly via email, and as listed on the sales showing. Only folks who have pre-registered can participate in the showing. We're going to be keeping the number of bidders per showing to 9 people. If there is enough interest, we will be willing to do a second showing. If you are pre-registered and you cannot attend for some reason, we're asking that you definitely contact the forester in charge beforehand at least 24 hours beforehand so we can allow another bidder in, given we are limiting the number of folks we want out in the field together. This is important in order to be fair to everybody else who's interested. Everyone attending the showing must adhere to the recommended social distancing guidelines in place at the time of the showing, as outlined in the governor's executive order. And this includes wearing a non-medical face covering while on site. And the forester in charge retains the right to halt or terminate the showing if the above measures are not being followed. And again, the details will be sent out with all the bid documents. For bid submittal and openings, the bids must be mailed into the district office. Hand-delivered bids will not be accepted. Our offices are closed right now. The bid openings, we're working on this, but they will not be available for in-person viewing. We do hope to have options for remote viewing electronically for those folks who might be interested. And of course, the bid results will be shared and deposits returned as soon as possible, as with all of our other traditional practices. And I think that covers it for me. Danny, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Nate. Does anybody have any questions for Nate? Okay, we have one coming in from Jack. Jack, I'm gonna unmute you.
Okay.
There you go.
Hey, thanks so much. This is Jack Bell from Longview Forest down in the southern part of the state. Thanks, Nate, and everyone else for putting this webinar on. I'm just curious whether there's any discussion in the state lands program of doing more work than usual this year. Specifically, you know, possibility of expanding the 16 projects you have underway or adding some others in, possibly some stewardship style projects that combine harvesting with service style work. You know, for us, like with the harvesting part of our business, and as Paul outlined, there's like tremendous uncertainty on what's going to happen in log markets, and we're assuming that, you know, a lot of private work may pull back given that uncertainty, and the public sector has, you know, a unique ability to help support the industry by doing more work. And while it's certainly possible that, you know, stumpage values could be down, I think there's some chance that might not be true given the competition that may be out there, and especially if combined with service style projects, like contractors are going to have a lot of reason to be as competitive as they can be to have work to do on the service part as well as the stumpage part.
Yep.
So I'm just curious if that's part of the discussion at all at this point.
Jack, thank you very much for a very thoughtful question. Commissioner Snyder is unmuted now, and he's going to respond to that one.
Great, thanks, Danny. Yes, thanks, Jack, and good to hear from you. Hope you're well. Good question, and I mean, the short answer is yes, we hope so. That's certainly in the mix. The slightly longer, all of that is just more and other is in the mix. The slightly longer answer is that we want to be realistic about what we can do, and we have to do things the way we have to do them. So there's, as you all know, there's quite a process to get to the point of putting sales up with public accountability, et cetera, involved. And we want to make sure we have a solid pipeline of projects coming. We're not in the position to just go put paint up and chase valuable timber. So I just want to manage the expectations that we are enthusiastically embracing this as like, well, let's see what we can do. Let's prioritize. We've already made that known. That's why you're seeing what Nate's presented here. But we realize that there's probably more, and particularly the other category of the service contracts, doing more variety of projects. We're aware of the role it can play. I think this department has played a role in downturns in the economy previously to try to float some local economic activity. We'll continue to do that. I think it's appropriate. But we need to balance it with everything else. And I just want to be clear that we are eager to do this. The staff all know this. They want to do it. But we just can't. We just need to also. There's a lot of other things that we have to attend to that we're responsible for, and we have limited ability to do so. So I just want to be clear that yes, we want to put more up and be creative, be helpful, but it's not just the switch that gets flipped, and we have many other demands that we have to follow as well. We want to just balance all that. The last piece to this, I would say, is that as federal stimulus money becomes available and recovery funds, we are positioning ourselves quite actively and have already proposed applying some of such funding to public investment, if you will, in public lands to do more contract work of a variety of types, whether it's timber stand improvement, invasives control, EAB mitigation, say in campgrounds and other high use areas, recreational access improvements, trailheads, parking, etc., water quality improvements, upgrading poor culverts to better functioning bridges, and many more such projects that we could envision happening in a way that put contractors, a diversity of relatively small contractors, to work again in the coming months as a part of our economic recovery, but that also has the long-term benefit of economic support for our forest and recreation economies over the long term. So seeing it as an investment for the long term with short-term benefits of kind of a back-to-work program. That we're pretty excited to try to propose and build that. And that's just another example of our thinking, I think, Jack, being consistent with what you're suggesting here. Does that cover it reasonably well? Are you any follow-up to that?
Hold on, I need to unmute him again. Okay, Jack, you're on.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you, Michael. And I completely understand the process that needs to be followed and the value in the process. So thanks very much. You know, relatedly, or just before I go, wanted to say thank you to all of you for all the guidance and materials that you've been putting out. It's unbelievably helpful as we're trying to get back to work. We were working on trying to develop some of our own policies and practices, and thankfully we're able to just abandon that effort because the materials that the state has put out are so good. So really appreciate that.
It's really nice to hear. That's what we want. That's what we're trying to do. And I want to just share that thanks with the staff, that several of whom you're hearing here today, that have been very active in helping us gather and compile and present the information. But we're supported by other staff and all of you who've contributed to this and helped us think through it, and other agencies in government and the governor's leadership himself. So thanks for that. It's really nice to hear, because that's what we're trying, exactly what we're trying to do, is be as helpful and responsive as we can in a multitude of ways, by how we act, what we do, and by providing this trusted clearinghouse of information that's timely and relevant and helpful. Thank you. Keep the questions coming, folks.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add on to that, Jack, and everyone else on the line. If there's something that you need that we're not providing, let us know. We've provided a survey link, and there's a generic email that goes to a bunch of people, most of the people on this call today, and we'll work on getting that information to you. So I'm gonna Paul, open your mic, because we have a question that came in from Kathy about ash markets. I think you have to unmute it yourself, Paul. I'm not able to. Can you unmute your mic, Paul? Oh, there you are.
There we go. All right, it's getting click happy here apparently. So, So yeah, ash markets, the exports are, the exports are going to tell the story, particularly with ash, oak, and cherry markets. Those three species markets are very limited domestically. Large majority of that lumber that in those three species goes to China and or Vietnam, with the vast majority of the mix being China versus Vietnam. But so export markets will tell the tale there to some extent. That being said, Ames True Temper has also recently announced that to their suppliers that they're actively going to be looking for ash. I think they said they were starting to buy again as of the 20th of April. I believe that's what was in the letter that they sent out. So their market is they're busy, and tool handles are apparently one of those things that also tracks with home gardening and seed sales. And as a result, they're looking at pretty good markets right now. So there's hopefully we'll see general demand for ash as a result of exports, but down there in Rutland County for sure and surrounding areas, Ames True Temper is going to be a potentially good market for you as well.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to go to a question here from Christine McGowan, and it's basically asking right now during the COVID situation, and most of us are all working from home right now and changing our practices for more electronic services. And we're certainly already trying to do that. And I think this is going to push us even faster. Honestly, particularly with the UVA program, we've been trying to move in that direction for some time. And hopefully this will help us get there quicker. We've already changed to electronic signatures. And I think as opportunities arise, we will continue to move in that direction. So you probably will most likely see us have more electronic options into the future. Unfortunately, we can't do things right away all the time. They do take investment and time, but we are moving in that direction. And when we've been asked what we could do into the future to enhance our services, we've been putting in proposals that will help us move more in that direction. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get to you. I have a question here from Ed Larson. Ed, I'm going to unmute your mic. I'm trying to unmute you, Ed. There you go, Ed. Ed, you're not coming through? Okay. If anybody else has a question, raise your hand. I'm going down the list here. There's another question, Seth, that you put in, just asking about the harvests that are put up differently in each district. And you have a question here about chip harvests not being offered in Rutland. I think that may be something we want to take back and look at. I think each sale is a little bit different, and they're looking at a variety of opportunities, whether or not they have the landing. So I'm not sure we can answer this one directly, but what we'll do is have Nate follow up with you on this particular situation.
Danny, I can just chime in quickly here that those sales in Rutland, the limiting factor for chips is logistics, particularly like the bombazine one. And but I will follow up with Seth.
Great. And there's another question that came in from John. Do we have the staff to prepare all the sales, and have you considered putting sale prep out to bid to the private sector? And I'll let Nate handle that one as well.
We have not considered contracting out to the private sector right now. It's certainly, we're open to all ideas. And was the first part of that question about available staff?
Yeah.
And whether we had the capacity to administer more sales or these sales?
to administer the sales that we currently have on the list.
Yes. Yep. I can say, I was thinking about this when Jack was talking, that when we were finally able to go out into the field this spring, across the board, folks were heading out to do timber prep. So as Mike said, people, our staff gets it, and hopefully we can carry out every one of these sales.
Great. And
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask Sam to answer the next question from Christine. For businesses that need to make deliveries out of state that requires overnight stay in an area that has COVID, will the driver be required to quarantine for 2 weeks upon coming back to Vermont?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can, if someone wants to email me the specifics, I'm happy to look into it. I know that we have said that essential service people doing essential work have not had to quarantine, but people doing non-essential work have, I believe is the way it's been handled. But I'm happy to confirm that and follow up. If you'd like to contact me directly, email me or call me, please.
Okay, anybody have any more questions? Raise your hand or put it in the question box. Ed, your hand is still raised and I can't seem to unmute your mic. Oh, there you go. You put it in the question box. Okay, let's see. How can we get the secondary market open so sawmills can move their inventory? How can we help make the case to ACCD task force that secondary manufacturing can comply with CDC instructions? Sam, do you want to handle that one, or Mike?
Sure. Welcome Sam's comments. This is Mike. Yeah, Ed, thanks. We, as you know, I think you know, when the first order came, no forestry was included, and we were pretty active over a 24-hour period making that case. And it came back pretty firm that the secondary manufacturing and, furniture, flooring, was not going to make the cut. And I think the same questions would be to the question of how to make the case now. I think the same questions exist, which is that it's still an emergency, it's still stay home, it's still important to try to minimize infection and spread. And so I think the answer is, how do you overcome that? How do you show that all of the guidance that's been provided for how to operate safely and with public health in mind, how do you do that in those facilities? I think that's the trick, is just to make the case that you have a plan for how to do it safely and under CDC and Vermont Department of Health guidelines for safe procedure. I think that's how you do it. I think if the answer is how do you make the case, the answer is you make the case by making a case that we got this, that we know how to do it, we can do it, and you have the testing and wherewithal and managing people coming and going and have the procedures in place. And it's a pretty high bar, but I think that's the way to do it, particularly as the governor continues to turn the spigot a quarter turn at a time. I'd like to think that this will be more doable. That's the best I got. Sam, would you add anything to that?
Yep, thank you. I would say that the guidance put out by VOSHA that we emailed out yesterday, and in terms of the spacing and putting those, it's a mandatory training for anybody that is open or going to open. I would say that they should be prepared to that, be prepared to follow that and demonstrate that they can comply with that as a minimum standard. And there's, I believe, and again, I'd have to go back and reread the changes that the turn of the spigot that was made last Friday. But there, I believe there are have been some considerations in there for some indoor work. And I know that ACCD would be, if business owners, managers, supervisors, et cetera, can come forward with a plan, as Mike said, that they would welcome the discussion. And VOSHA, Project WorkSafe, that helped us with the logger safety trainings, has also expressed a strong willingness to help people come forward with plans. I think my conversation with them as they reviewed our forest economy workplace safety document was primarily they're looking for the who and the how. Who's going to ensure these things are done and how are they going to be done is what they're looking for in their plans. And I'm happy to forward information or make connections and be helpful anywhere along the spectrum of where people need help there.
Great. Thank you, Sam. We have Charlie Hancock has his hand up, and I'm going to unmute your mic. You should be good, Charlie.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Danny, and thanks, everybody. I just had a question thinking about the updates, plan updates that's coming summer and fall, and wondering about economic hardships, because the cost of a plan can get pretty steep depending on the size of the parcel. And, you know, a lot of landowners are already land rich and kind of cash poor, exclusive of income, you know, due to unemployment or market conditions, thinking about dairy farmers. So I'm just wondering if the department might start to consider economic hardship as a grounds for an extension request, like a 1-year request or something like that. So thanks.
Keith, Keith or Mike, do you want to handle that one?
Go ahead, Keith.
You're muted, Keith. Keith, we still can't hear you. Oh, he can't unmute his mic. What's up with that? So I guess I'll handle it. Mike, you can chime in. Keith is unfortunately can't unmute his mic right now. Okay. Oh, there he is.
There we go. All right. So there are going to be a lot of challenges related to COVID, and financial challenges are going to be among them. I think we're going to be open to considering extensions resulting from COVID-19, and in some cases, I think financial hardship will need to be among them. That's going to be a reality that folks are going to be facing. Statute does require that we only can provide extensions up to a year. And so I think as we get a better handle on things, we'll provide some more guidance out to folks that frame up the approach. But I think that's the best I can do right now.
Great. Thank you, Keith. Not seeing any more questions, and looking at the time, I just want to make sure everybody knows that we're always here and available to ask questions or share comments or feedback. And we're going to pass it over to Sam Lincoln now and give a little bit of an update on what to expect next.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
I got a text from our staff asking me to let folks know. I sent this out in the email last week, but generally sending certified mail is a really great way to ensure that somebody gets something. Right now, it's a really great way to ensure that we don't receive it because we're not going to be there to sign for it. And so just want to remind folks that if you're sending something certified, it may have difficulty getting to us. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Keith. And Sam, I'm making you presenter so we can see you. And you're on.
All right. Can you see me?
You look
Look like I need more coffee. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We've got a great turnout today and good questions. And what we wanted to close out with is those of you that we've spoken with on the phone or have contacted us in general is, again, how can we be more helpful? What are we doing that you need more of? What are we not doing that we could be generating, developing, chasing down leads for you in the workplace safety realm, in the forest economy markets realm? That's what information is out there. As Paul said, we were going to redo the We're going to update the market survey in a little while as the stay-at-home orders are lifted regionally, and so we can get a good sense of what's going on. So we plan to keep the information flowing to you, but we want to hear from you. A lot of what we're doing now is because of things that we heard from you, and we want to be helpful. If there are ways that either from the policy world or spending, federal stimulus money, things like that, that you have ideas for the recovery of the state and particularly the forest economy, please make sure that you're sending those our way. So you can send things directly to me, and I will either direct them or compile them as we're doing that. So that would be helpful. You all have lots of great ideas, and can help many of your peers across the state. To follow on that is we wanted to announce that we were going to do this, repeat this webinar in 2 weeks from today, and we have some ideas about topics, but if you have something you'd like us to ask a guest presenter to be on for part of it, if you have questions you'd like us to answer broadly so that everybody hears the answers, please send those to us. If you would just again want to make sure that you know that you can influence that as well, that if there's things that you need in particular, and we will merge the feedback we get from you on that along with some ideas we have, but particularly we're thinking about how do you navigate the federal relief. A lot of questions about how to do that, how far it will go, and how much more is coming and things like that. So we'd like to provide some information there. So with that, make sure, again, you have my phone number, email address. It's on the department website. Many of you have it in my email signature. But thank you for joining us today. We hope it's been helpful to you, and we appreciate all your good work and want to help as much as we can. So, Danny, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, with that, thank you everybody for joining us. This is recorded, so we'll send a link out or put it up on our website if you do want to share it with anybody. And hopefully you can join us again in 2 weeks. Stay safe and stay connected. Thank you.